Good morning. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Is it the best of times or the worst of times? Once again, another American sector becomes a political Rorschach test. First, the good. The economy has largely defied gravity despite the uncertainty of Donald Trump's tariffs. The nation's GDP grew sharply in the second quarter, and people are shopping. Consumer spending, which powers 70% of the economy, is also up. Combine this with steady inflation, a stronger stock market, and tariff revenue in the billions, according to the White House. Now, here's the bad news. The unemployment rate is rising. Hiring is slowing. July's jobs report was the worst since the pandemic. Prices are up. Investment in this is down. And once again, confusion and chaos reign over who gets a tariff and who gets a delay and who gets a break. Oh, and Trump just fired the messenger in charge of the jobs reports. Why? Because he didn't like the results.
We're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. Right. And you know what? I did the right thing.
So, do you feel liberated yet? Well, it depends on who you ask. This firing of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics is, I think, one of the more stunning things that Trump has done, not because people in Washington will be stunned, but because of the ripple effects that it will have for the people who rely on it around the globe and on Wall Street, people who make business decisions here in this country.
Yeah, I think that there's going to inevitably have to be a private sector alternative that emerges. Most of these statistics can be pulled after the fact. Even if the government tries to flub the numbers or fudge them, there is a way that we're going to be able to get that data. But keep in mind, he's toyed with the idea of firing Jerome Powell on a number of occasions. That's something that's much more difficult for him to do. There are checks in place. His lawyers, I bet, have advised him against doing so. This is something that's technically within his purview to do. But I think it raises concerns naturally if you're going to put somebody in place who's going to be a bit more favorable to you. Are they going to inflate the numbers as we see them? But to your opening, we're in a choose your own adventure economy. There's something good. There's plenty of good things you could point to, and there's plenty of bad things you could point to. What you don't need right now is this sort of just uncertainty when you're giving out basics around jobs numbers.
I mean, just 2 days ago, Howard Lutnick was saying GDP surged to 3% and the Trump economy has officially arrived. Biden's first quarter is behind us and growth is already accelerating. So the only thing that's really changed is Trump's mood.
Yeah.
Today.
I mean, look, if I were a decision desk on the economy, I'd say it's too early to call. We don't know exactly where this Trump economy is necessarily going, though I do have to ask the question of whether or not the suit that Donald Trump wore on Friday is from the Banana Republic. Because when you fire a lifelong bureaucrat whose mere job is to count the numbers, count the numbers, count the number of jobs. This is not a partisan position. This, to me, is the worst of Donald Trump that gets at the conspiracy theories, the idea that the 2020 election was stolen when clearly it wasn't. These job numbers weren't flubbed. This is a reaction to Donald Trump's tariffs that, at least in the near term, at least the job market did not necessarily like.
I think that's absolutely right. And what scares me here is this notion of if you don't give me jobs numbers I like, I will fire you. What will the next person do, right? Every Trump firing is that if you don't give me what I like. So does he live in a world where he doesn't actually know what's going on because the people who might say, hey, something bad is happening, wouldn't say it to him because they would risk losing their job?
Look, it is well within his purview to make this decision to fire the jobs person. It's well within purview to do it. And look, they had to make adjustments to the jobs numbers for the prior months. There were some adjustments that had to be made about a year ago in August. So when you look at it, over time, it's within his purview to do it. If he doesn't have confidence in the person, he has a right to fire them.
In other words,
elections have consequences.
So in other words, if he doesn't like the results that the person is producing, he can fire them.
There was an adjustment in the results. The results weren't right.
That doesn't mean that the director was wrong.
This also isn't going to give him the solution he wants, because the reality is, and we said this all leading up to the election, you can give people whatever stats you want about the economy. How they feel is going to dictate their feelings. Heading into the midterms, if they people they know are struggling to find jobs, if they've been laid off, if unemployment is up, they're going to know that regardless of what the Bureau of Labor Statistics
That's true.
says.
It also is true that revisions happen. They happen under every president. They happened when he was president the first time. They happened under Biden. So the idea that revisions are inherently a problem is nonsensical. That doesn't.
Well, I don't know that it's nonsensical. It's again.
It is. I mean,
within the
it
province
is
of the president. Elections
he's
have
acting as
consequences.
if this is
If he
something
wants to change somebody
new.
out, it's well within
He's
his
acting
province
as if this
to do
is
so.
something new when it's really not. There are revisions. Actually, almost every month. It's just that they're not always all large.
And the argument this is going to have some tremendous ripple effect on the economy long term. I mean, going back to your point, that it's really not. And we're not going to be talking about this a week from now.
We're not going to be able to trust the government to tell us the truth. That is a very important thing, especially within a global economic context. How do we know that the next person will tell us the truth? Because his job is on the line or her job is on the line.
That is a good question. I mean, how will we know?
Look, this person is not a protected job. We have elections have consequences.
But to answer his question,
we can change out folks in leadership positions because the president wants to.
I know, but Jim, to answer Touré's question, how does Trump explain to people that they should trust these numbers when he has literally explicitly fired someone because he did not like the numbers that they produced?
Or he didn't believe in the numbers, or the numbers had to be adjusted.
Going forward, when he puts somebody in that position, the whole world is going to assume, well, that person has that job because that person's going to produce numbers that Donald Trump likes.
Look, that's why we have congressional oversight. Right? That's why Congress exists, to have congressional oversight. And it's up to Congress then to hold these agencies accountable. We have checks and balances in this country.
Yeah,
the president isn't the only check and is not the only balance.
It's just interesting that Trump is sort of devoid of agency in this situation, as if he doesn't have the power to exert some kind of modicum of self-control in this moment.
Donald Trump can do a lot of things as president. The presidency is vested in enormous powers. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Right. And in this particular case, I am somebody who studies stats. And, I give Donald Trump, I think, a very fair shake. I give all sides, I think, a pretty fair shake. But it is reliant on the numbers being reliable. And when you make moves like this, you see a little bit of doubt that the numbers going forward with whomever is put in charge of the BLS, all of a sudden, at least in terms of numbers, that they are not nearly what they should be.
And that's a very key point, because if you put somebody in who's just a diehard Trump loyalist and suddenly you start seeing off-the-charts numbers that just don't reflect the reality of the economy, Americans are not going to believe it. But we do live in such a polarized environment right now that about half the country is going to be like, yeah, I don't trust a Biden appointee, put in a Trump person. And the other half is going to be like, this is unprecedented. You're firing a bureaucrat who's not a partisan. So I think either way you're going to have a lack of trust, but I do think there's a way that the numbers should be.
But your other point is trust the bureaucracy? Are we going to sit around this table and say that people in this country trust career bureaucrats at this point?
First of all,
I don't think that's the case. We had to change election for that
however
reason.
Many years, everybody gets the jobs numbers on the first Friday of the month, and they digest them. But the more important thing about jobs numbers, I mean, yes, everybody understands the economy based on their own personal economy, what's happening in their families and their communities. But government entities, businesses make decisions based on these official numbers. They matter because they are tied to something. So when they go away, I mean, we already have private sector numbers. ADP produces numbers, but the reason we have government numbers is because we have government entities that make decisions based on those numbers. When that goes away, what do we have?
And are we going to sit around this table and say that government always gets it right?
Government
the bureaucrats always get it right? That we trust everything the bureaucracy
Well, let me go back to what Harry Enten said.
There's no way the American people
Let me go back to what Harry Enten said at the beginning. What makes the United States different from the Banana Republic or the Soviet Union or whatever it is that actually, that over many decades, we've created a system in which people believe, not just us as Americans, but around the world, that American statistics and numbers and facts are generally reliable. And when that goes away, that's the part that I think that is uncharted territory.
But you're presupposing it's going to go away just because we change out the person.
I'm just asking. I mean, I'm asking the question. What's the criteria by which Donald Trump's going to pick that new person in that slot?
I think the ongoing attack on truth that we see from Trump will have a global impact of we cannot trust the United States. We don't know what they're saying is true.